If you're into smashing shorter distances, are long runs necessary? In this video, we're going to unpack if you need long runs, how long they should be, what benefits you get from going long, and what to avoid on long runs.
So let's have a look at what the purpose of a long run is. And the first thing that a long run does is it builds aerobic capacity, which means at a basic level is the ability of your body to utilize oxygen. Endurance sport is aerobic in nature, and so the greater amount of oxygen you can use, the better you can perform. As you do more long runs, the stress that your body is under forces your body to make some adaptive changes. And one of these is to increase the density of blood capillaries to skeletal muscles. These capillaries are basically the avenues by which oxygen-rich blood gets delivered to the muscle. And then the second thing that happens is that you increase the density of mitochondria. Mitochondria are basically your energy factories inside your cells. The long run stimulates the body to increase the genes that are involved in producing the mitochondria, as well as the aerobic enzymes in the mitochondria that are going to utilize oxygen. In combination, this will help you perform much better.
One of the key aspects about a long run and why it's so important is that it's helping you build a resistance to fatigue. Sounds like fancy word, Shona. What does that mean? Essentially, think about it this way. If you've gone out for a long run, or let's start with 30 minutes as a run. You do that this week, and when you're running in that 30-minute run, you actually are getting a little bit tired in the last 5 minutes. Next week, when you go out for a 40-minute run, you find you're actually only getting tired in the 35th minute. So each week, you're building this capacity and this resistance to getting tired or fatiguing over time. That is one of the main reasons why we do a long run, is that we're building that over time. When we run, the body breaks down and it eventually goes, oh, I don't really like feeling like that. And so it makes itself a little bit stronger. And that's what we do by progressively increasing our volume over time and increasing our long runs.
The third factor as to why it is important to be doing long runs is to improve your running economy. Now, I just want to quickly clear up, we often speak about running economy and running efficiency as the same thing. There is, however, a slight difference. Your running economy is the cost on your body to perform a certain task. Your running efficiency is how well do we produce energy, utilize oxygen to the body, to the muscles, in order for us to become more economical. So there's more of a physiological aspect to running efficiency. Things like specific training sessions, things like your long run in particular. Your long run helps build that aerobic capacity, as Ntutu's already mentioned, which in turn affects your running economy. Running economy has multifaceted aspects where we talk about physiological, so there's various components that affect your physiology, as well as the biomechanical components. So how well can we get our running stride, our ground contact time, for example? That is all our running biomechanics, and how economical we can make those factors to make us better runners. And this is where that long run really helps that, because it gives us time to train those different aspects and gets that muscle memory happening for us to be able to be more economical runners.
One of the really important benefits of doing long runs is that you gradually strengthen tendons, ligaments, muscles, and prepare your joints for the hard work that you need to do to be able to run really fast over the short distances and to be able to finish it off on race day.
The long run will challenge your mental fortitude, and what this means is that you're going to have to rely on a lot more than your physical ability to get through the long run. So the more that you do long runs, you'll find yourself being able to soldier on when times get tough, and this will hold you in good stead when you end up doing your race, particularly those last 6 to 10 kilometers of a marathon, which we know are often the hardest part of a race. You will know from your long runs that you've been there before, that you've suffered through those struggles, and that will help you with finishing your race.
The next reason why long runs are so important is it gives you a great opportunity to practice nutrition. Practicing the nutrition in training, so for example, not eating breakfast before you go out on your long run on the weekend, versus getting to race day, you're running a marathon and suddenly someone said have breakfast and you're having breakfast. You're not used to that, your body doesn't know how to handle that, and you could have gastrointestinal issues on race day. So this is where the practice aspect comes into it. Another angle to that practicing of the nutrition is your in-race or in-training session nutrition. Things like gels, sports drinks, energy drinks, race bars, different types of food. Those are the kind of things that in your long runs, you should be playing around with. You need to figure out what works for you. A certain race gel you may have heard of from a friend is not necessarily going to be good for you. So you need to play around with what works, how much you need to be taking in. Again, we talk about certain amounts of carbohydrates, proteins, fats that you need to be taking in throughout a training session. So this long run really is a good, call it a dress rehearsal, where you get the chance to play around with things, make your mistakes in your long run rather than on race day. You could try something. If it doesn't work for you, the next time you go out for your long run, you know, I need to avoid sandwiches, for example, and try peanuts or try something different, date bars, for example. So try and play around, figure out what works for you, figure out how much you should be taking in, how often you should be taking it in, and then make sure you have got a really good nutrition strategy for you to then employ on race day.
Now let's look at the most common mistakes we see with people who are doing long runs. The first mistake is you need to build those long runs up over a period of time so that you can allow the tendons, ligaments, muscles to adapt, as I spoke about earlier in the video. And secondly, and almost more importantly, you cannot treat the long runs as an opportunity to show yourself how fit you're getting. Those long runs need to be run really, really easy so that you get those true physiological benefits that come from running slow and long. So make sure that you don't run too fast on long run day.
So now you know why the long run is important and the most common mistakes people make. Let's talk about how long your long run should actually be. And my favorite answer in sports science or in running is always, it depends. How long is a piece of string? It's always going to be relative to you specifically and your training ability, as well as what you're aiming for, the race distance that you're aiming for. The key thing here is that it's about your race distance. So if you're training for a 5K, you're not necessarily going to be going out and doing 3-hour long runs. Equivalently, if you're training for a half marathon, you might very well cover more than a half marathon distance in a training run. When we get beyond the half marathon distance, if we're training from a marathon and ultras, that is really the defining points as to which you don't necessarily want to be covering the distance in your training. What I mean by that, so let's take a marathon as an example. You don't have to cover the 42 kilometers or 26 miles in a training run. If you do that in a training run, it's going to take you so many days to recover before you can start training again. And I'd far rather have athletes getting the benefit of more training days as opposed to one long training run that actually might put you at risk of other injuries. For the most part, sticking with our marathon example, we normally say if you've raced a marathon to have at least 2 weeks off from running. So even if you go and run this as an easy training run, you're going to need a couple of days or at least a week off from training. And so by covering that distance in your training, you're then losing out on 5 to 7 days worth of training thereafter. And I'd far rather have you building blocks of training on top of each other than just going out for one long run and putting yourself at risk.
The long run is a critical part of any training plan, but it's only one piece of the puzzle. Over and above the long run, if you aren't doing these 4 things, you will never be the best runner that you can be.